Welcome to the Mike and Doug Show. I'm Doug. Hi, Mike.
Hey Doug, how you today?
Well, I'm a little crushed. I look out in the world and it looks like civilization is falling into its grave. It's already been pushed and it's on the way because there's new laws. And these laws just underscore the necessity for a secure system of communication between yourself and others for every aspect of your life. Because as we pointed out, when the Chapter 13 was put into place in the European Union, it squelched freedom of speech and it used artificial intelligence to do so. Same exact artificial intelligence has now been put in all the social media. And now Biden, because of the TikTok law, can in fact wipe anyone off or even wipe off the entire system because he can say that it is not part of what the NDAA says can be propagandized Americans through social media. And so it just underscores for me look at what's going on in the campuses and look at the idiocy that's going on there. And now
It
with
reminds me of '69.
yeah, and a new law that says that you can't say anything anti-Semitic. Well, we've already have laws that say you can't say anything anti-Islamic or anti anything that has to do with a minority. But the point is that in Britain, in Holland, in Sweden, in Norway, all throughout Europe, people are being put in New Zealand and Australia and in Canada. They're being put in jail for saying something on their email to a friend.
Uh,
That's where we have come to, folks. There is no more freedom of speech. And if you don't have skiff and you can't send something in a secure system that is absolutely infallible and it's the best cryptography around, cryptology around, especially because it's quantum proof and it's polymorphic and all that good stuff. And your new updates to it make it simpler to use all the time. So really, there's no excuse. So if you end up in jail for basically criticizing the current administration, don't call us because we gave you the solution.
yeah, well, a lot of people have to have a very bad experience before they wake up, but let's hope that's not the case with my skiff. And we've been intensely working to get this update out for the last couple of months, and so I've had my head down, and and in coming up today, I hear about this new act, House HR 6090, and all the hubbub around it that started appearing last night. So we did our usual thing. We pulled the actual act up from Congress. That's what I just showed you. And then we pulled the one of the key references in this act up, which is referencing a group called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. And the shocking aspect, there are a lot of shocking aspects about this law. And I have read a lot of laws and resolutions, and I've never read one exactly like this. This is not a law that I can see because it has no consequences. There are no penalties if you don't follow this law, whatever this is. It's not really a law. Let me just read you one of the opening phrases to discuss this. One, it says, "It is the sense of Congress that," and then it's got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine bullet points. Now, how I've never read a law. Usually, it's Congress resolves. Uh,
It's the sense of Congress. The sense
it's
of
the
Congress
sense,
is
whatever. I don't care.
nonsense. It's nonsense.
Okay, it's nonsense, but it's
And
the
what they're
sense of
saying
Congress.
is they
I've never
sensed
seen
it.
that in a law.
They
Can
smelled
I finish
anti
my point?
something. Yes. But this kind of this is the demons in the
Okay,
laws that we talk
I
about.
agree with you. What I want, the point I'm trying to make is this is just vagary. It's not anything to do with a resolution. And then they talk about all kinds of points. And then the worst part of it is, in my mind, is they don't even define what the subject of the law is about. And they cite a third party non-governmental organization for their definition of this particular word. And so we did a little more digging. We said, okay, what do we know about this word, this company? And that is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. I hadn't actually heard of that. And so we looked it up, and I can show you who's in charge of it. And when I show you who's in charge of it, unfortunately, we didn't make this up, but it's going to march right back to the City of London. And can I show you, because I haven't used this feature much, but what I want to do is I'm going to show you this website. This is right off their website that Congress cites in this so-called law. And I think I've done it right.
Yes.
Okay, there is the current chairman of this organization that's cited in American law. So this is Lord Eric Pickles, aka Jabba the Hutt. And so here we have a Lord Eric Pickles who has pledged an oath of fealty to the British monarch, defining terms in American laws. What's wrong with that picture? And then we go even farther. He's got a couple of sidekicks in this organization. So let me go there and scroll down a bit. We have the Secretary General, and then we have two advisors. And one of them is Sir Andrew Burns, chair of the Grant Review Committee and Strategy Implementation. So he appears to be the man that is organizing this entity. So I haven't looked yet where they're even where their charter is out of, but with so many Brits involved in this organization who are pledged in fealty to the British monarch, what we're looking at is a very dangerous situation where our Congress is citing this organization for a definition that's vague. When you go on to their site about the definition of the law, you're going to see the kitchen sink in the definition, and it looks like a piece of propaganda. It doesn't look like a definition that you would use in a court of law. So we got a problem here. We got a serious problem here.
Well, this shows whose colors they're flying in the current wars that are going on, both in our campuses, in DC, in Capitol Hill, and also across the world. It just shows that everything has to be put through the monitor. The monitor are Brits. They're
Yes.
Pilgrims Society members.
Yeah.
They're telling us the definition of what it is that is illegal. So I would suggest that all the people who voted for this, and as I said when you were sharing this with me, I'm sure it was overwhelmingly supported, because these people who they want to make sure that you don't criticize anymore are those who donate the largest amounts of money to the Chamber of Commerce, which provides the money for the Congress and the Senate. And
Yeah.
if you don't go along party lines, you don't get that money. And if you don't say what those donors tell you to say, then you don't get to be a politician anymore.
I don't see that we have a better example of who is running America right now. And there's a lot of people asking that question, and a lot of people are blaming the CIA or the NSA, but nobody is pointing the finger to the Brits. And I think what they've done here is they stepped over a line and they showed us who is running America, because they got our entire Congress to vote for this law. There you
And
go.
I will bet you, I'll bet you this time I'm going to go big, 25 cents, that there's not one single congressperson or senator who's voting for this that has read what you just put up on the screen, or knows who that group is, or knows who controls it. For instance, why would a Holocaust remembrance group be made up of of people who weren't murdered in the Holocaust and who are actually Brits, so that they control then what free speech is in America? They got the squelch button.
Well, we know, don't we? We know that the First Imperial Press Conference in 1909 set up the current mechanism for propaganda throughout the world, and the British Pilgrims Society has been running it ever since. And so they are now saying, you can't even stop us. I think that's what they're saying here.
What's your phrase? Government by publicity? No,
Government by journalism.
Journalism. That's all this is. And we are expected to believe the lies. When you turn on mainstream media, if I turned it on, I would just simply be screaming at the screen that I was looking at because of the lies. I'd be saying, no, that's not true. That's not true. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Oh no, you pig! So I would probably be locked up for hate speech if someone was listening to what I say in my house. If I look at the news, so here's the thing: the gates of hell have been opened, but so have the gates of heaven. Now, the unfortunate thing: only about 25% of human beings are awake at this point, and they are seeing the gates
Now, let
open.
me ask you this: where did you get that number, 25%?
Because in the future of what is predicted with human evolution towards becoming angels, archangels, and archai, humans are left behind at each stage. So that ends up leaving behind 75%.
Hmm.
So, that's just my rough calculations, but it's based upon basically esoteric spiritual principles. But the point is, you were at the conference, did I ask the question, how many of you believe that we are either in the end times, the apocalypse? Was there any hand that didn't go up?
Everybody's hand went up.
So however many people were in that room, 300, 400, 500,
500.
Every hand went up, because those are the awake people. Those are the part of the 25%. And every one of them says we are in the end times. We're going to hell in a basket. And it's the road of perdition, and the 7 deadly sins are our rulers. And so what I'm suggesting is, in our time, because our presidency has now become a dictatorship, when you take the demonic laws that these people on the Capitol Hill are passing, and then they're approved by the president, who then can write executive orders and directives and so on and so forth. The minute,
Yes.
and we said this last conversation, the minute that Biden says we're in a climate emergency, and they've been saying this for years, that's it. Martial law, folks. There doesn't even have to be an election. There don't have to be nothing. You have no more private property. Anything can be confiscated for the good of all. And recently,
that is, if I may interject there, that is because under martial law, the Constitution is suspended, correct?
Correct. And Bill of Rights, you have no rights. But also in these executive orders, it specifically says and defines what can constitute a national emergency. And believe it or not, we've already had 2 of those happen in the last month. They were coronal mass ejections that caused geomagnetic forcing of the earth, that caused events that the president could say, that's it. We're in a solar maximum. We got 1 more year. And in this next year, I have to make sure that, that the president is aware of the fact that the sun is attacking us. And that's the reason the chemtrails are spread. The White House has said this. I'm not making this up. The White House has said, we want to white out the sky. We want to block the sun.
Such geniuses.
They're uncreative, unimaginative imbeciles who take science as a science of death, materialism as a science of subnature. It's a science of going down under the earth and turning humans not even into animals, not even into plants, but into minerals. That is the intent of materialism, is that you are nothing more than, probably in the future, we won't be Soylent Green, but we certainly will be melted down for the minerals in our body and sold. And that's only worth a few dollars. But that is where they go with this. This is the people in charge. In every ism that I know of, in every ism turns into a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell me of a single socialist experiment that worked. You can't tell me of a capitalism, free market experiment. Name one that's worked. None of those have worked because they're isms.
Well, we've never had a free market. It's always been rigged.
Absolutely.
It's been rigged ever since the carrier pigeons of the Rothschilds. Once they started figuring out that they could use propaganda and communications to get ahead of the game, it's been rigged ever since. So we haven't had free market.
And that's, you said it, intelligence. And what is intelligence? Intelligence rules the war. Intelligence rules the dictators who create war. And intelligence is the most important thing right now, but you have to be able to discern intelligence. So when you hear something from any source, you need to be able to figure out if it's true. But one thing's for sure, if it's true, it will be verboten. It will be forbidden. That's what the new law is. That's the reason the FCC just passed their net neutrality stupidity again. That's the reason that the TikTok law went into effect. In other words, the president will control all communications and intelligence during the next election, so he will be reelected. Come on, this is real simple. We've seen it in every orange revolution on the face of the earth. We've written intelligence reports showing you that there have been at least 14 George Soros inspired color revolutions. And what was the number one tool they used? Social media. Why? Because intelligence and propaganda controls the masses. And
Right.
look at what they've convinced pro-Palestinians now on, pro-Hamas. The people who are pro-Hamas don't know that Israel created Hamas as a counterpoint to Yasser Arafat's PLO, because the PLO wasn't attacking Israel enough. So they created Hamas, and they did it two ways. They made sure Hamas had so many supplies and food and water for the people who were basically in prison in the Gaza Strip. That was all coming from Israel. But on the other
Right.
hand, they used that as a front to supposedly launch 2,700 missiles that killed over 2,000 Israelis. I haven't seen more than a couple missiles that looked real, couldn't tell whether they were, and I haven't seen one dead Israeli yet.
Yeah,
But the point
lot of
is,
talk,
a
but
lot of
very little
talk.
evidence.
And Gaza, who knows what's going on? I just saw aerial views of what Gaza looks like now, the northern strip. It looks like Dresden. If that's true, we certainly aren't being told any truth about what's going on there. So you can't believe any of that, folks. You have to believe your own heart, and you have to believe your own words. And if you want to keep speaking truth, you have to understand that intelligence is the key factor. And if you want to be awake so that you aren't overthrown by the invaders who are coming across the borders of every country in the world, promoted by the ism called Catholicism, the Pope basically says you're not a Christian if you don't allow illegal aliens into your country. Well, that's completely silly. It's an ism that's turned into a dictatorship. And all these isms, in most cases, except for the really old ones like the Vatican, they were percolated in incubators in the city of London or in London itself. And they were sent to these countries to basically create civil war, to create people fighting against each other so that the bankers and the brokers could sweep in as economic predators and fleece the countries.
Well, let me
That's
give
the
you a
history
couple
of
of
the
examples.
world.
We've talked about this before, but we have proven that members of the British Pilgrims Society were the ones who housed and coached Vladimir Lenin as he was developing his concepts for Bolshevism, and that was all done in the city of London. And then later, we proved that the Pilgrim Society, through the Institute for Pacific Relations and the YMCA, coached Mao Zedong in China and gave him his early launch pad for communism in China. So therefore, we have both versions of communism in our age that were all British inspired and British led. And when I'm talking, I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about a small group of people called the Pilgrim Society that are even buried within the Privy Council and the Parliament. These are a small group of people that are running the world truly from Fleet Street in London or the City of London. And that's who the enemy is in our case. They are directing this and they're geniuses at it. Look at this. They created Hamas, they created both sides of this conflict, and now they're just managing the PR for whatever story they want to come out that day. And so they're punishing people for their own narratives. And then what are they doing? They're funding a very well coordinated signage. They've got their chants down. They're pretty good actually. Being a musician, I was interested to see how they're doing these chants, and they've got drums and they've got it all very well orchestrated, and it looks spontaneous, but it's anything but spontaneous. And I, from the late 60s, when the KGB was running the riots in the US, and we now know from whistleblowers and now just from people who have giving us their testimony, they were running the whole operation in the United States. And who was running it? Was it the KGB? No, it was the British, because the British were the ones that are in charge of our newspapers, have been since J.P. Morgan in 1915 bought up editorial control of all of our major newspapers. We know that for a fact. That was exactly the same time when they got Carnegie to start funding all the libraries in the country. Why? Because he was generous? No. They want to make sure that in the end, the bad public relations that the British Empire had out of the revolution would not continue, so that they could do what? And this is in the newspapers of the time: annex America. That's what they're about. Now we see two British knights running this Holocaust group, and they're actually defining definitions in our law that aren't even defined. When you go to their site, those aren't definitions. Those are propaganda screeds.
Not only that, they don't even understand the word anti-Semitism.
Yeah, there we go. Give us a little lesson in what that means.
The Semites, there are no Semites. There's the leftover Semites in the Levant, but that means everyone in the Levant. That means all Muslims and all supposed Jews who aren't Jews. They're actually Hebrews who were Chaldeans, who were on the east side of Babylon. Abraham was a Chaldean.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
You're talking about the sons of Ishmael, right?
Oh, well, the sons of Ishmael are from, of course, that would be the Muslims, who
Right.
are there's two lines that arose from Abraham. That would be the Hebrew line, supposedly, and the Muslim line. And so it goes back to the same person. But the deal is that, what I think, to go back to what you said, the what's it called, the Institute for Pacific Relations,
Right.
that came in after the British attempt for the League of Nations, which no one would go for, which was again British control of the world. Then the International Pacific Relations was basically to control the whole East, because they knew they were still fleecing those resources. And then they created the United Nations,
Correct.
which recently took over America through the World Health Organization. And it was beautiful. A few days ago, Tedros himself, the man who put us into a pandemic, a fake pandemic, declared that that Bibi Netanyahu needs to stop attacking Gaza. This is supposed to be a medical man who's worried about the next avian flu, which they've already announced.
These guys are so full of themselves. They can't stop now. They're just all yakking. Whatever the Hegelian dialectic is for that day is what they're repeating.
And it's the sad news. Tedros gets put in charge of the World Health Organization. He's not even a virologist. He knows nothing about pandemics. He's pretty much an idiot. He's a communist, and he's a friend of the
cardboard cutout.
And he's a Chinese promoter. He promotes the Chinese. He never once has held them to any responsibility whatsoever for the supposed pandemic, though he will tell you it came from there. And he's never once mentioned the P4 lab, which is where these bioweapons are created.
Well, I know that it's a favorite thing to do, is separate the Chinese from the British. But from everything I can see, you can't. China is a fabrication of Britain, and Britain has never lost control of China. I don't care what anybody says, because we've looked at the software systems that are running the banks in China, and they're all made in Britain. So if they're all made in Britain, then that's the guys who really control the banks in China.
The British Commonwealth has many more than 54 nations, because the Bolsheviks were created by the Brits, and they still control them economically. And remember, the British started the war in Ukraine by attacking Russia. Don't forget that. And remember that it was the Brits who gave the weapons for the artillery to bomb the Donbass and kill 200,000 Ukrainians from Kiev. Let's remember, there was a civil war going on there before the Russians got involved, okay? And who was it that caused the war to happen, has promulgated the war all along, has sent in commandos all along, has given practically every weapon and piece of munitions they have? The British. But you won't hear anybody say anything like that. Now remember, when you say Britain, you say Israel. When you say Britain, you say China. When you say Britain, you say Russia. And then think of the nations that are the most squelched for free speech. That would be Canada, who Trudeau just a week ago or so now is putting people in jail for what they say in their email. Okay,
Okay,
and
that's a Commonwealth country.
you can't make any public statements about anything against anything that is part of the administration. And then the worst one, how about 40 years in jail or and $5,000 fine? No, $40,000 fine, 5 years in jail in Australia to say that you don't believe in the vaccines.
Another Commonwealth country.
And then the worst of all was New Zealand, wasn't it?
Another
Another
Commonwealth country.
Commonwealth country. And then where was like the second worst? Britain. Oh,
Okay, the
a
head of the
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth.
And
So
then in
that's 4 of the
Scotland,
5
and
eyes
then
right there.
Ireland. If you name, and in America, if you name the countries that were the worst in squelching freedom of speech and all freedoms, locking you down in your house for what they called, what is it they call when you segregate somebody? That's the exact opposite of what you should do in this situation. If you make people stay in their own houses with sick people, you basically condemn them to it. And the whole thing is backwards. Masks do nothing but create illness. This has been proven in the 54 studies that I've looked at. Everyone knows this. Oh, and by the way, yes, I just want to say I love to say I was right. I was right. $2.5 billion settlement for Johnson & Johnson baby talc powder that has been giving people cancer ever since the Fauci family was digging it up from the ground, knowing that it was poison and putting it in medicine. So Fauci, not only did Moderna get hit big, so Fauci started to lose his money on that, but then he lost the lawsuit for his family through Johnson & Johnson, which he has a big part in, for talc. And then remdesivir has now been bashed by everybody, and even Tamiflu, which is another one of the drugs that he created. So this guy is losing. FedNow didn't work. Fed Online didn't work. The release of the central bank digital currency in America didn't work. There's so many things that aren't working now that you can see that just because you open the gates of hell, it does not mean that the demons are organized. They all fight with one another. Only a few of them actually work together. And then there's the one who's the most powerful who controls them. But the point is that these things are out of control, which then shows evil for what it is. So the good people can then see what good is even more clearly. And that's what's happening. So you can either be on the side where they come and they arrest you for something you said or implied, because this definition that the IHRA has defined for this hate speech is even if it seems to appear, even if it has the appearance of hate speech. So the other day, Greg Reese from the site, one of the most popular sites out there, puts out a video for the first time that he has bleeped out words. And let me give you a little phrase that he kept having to bleep out. He kept having to bleep out the word bombed or killed when referring to Israel in relationship to the Gaza Strip. So in other words, it might appear to someone listening with the new law that he had insinuated hate speech against a protected minority, which is not even American, by the way. And so we are protecting minorities in other countries. This isn't even America that we're protecting. And so when he had to start bleeping that out, that showed us, because of course he's part of the spin zone. But the point is that what he was showing us is you better get ready to never say anything bad about these people again. And remember, for 8 hours on one of the campuses recently, just in the last couple of days, they let the two sides fight and bloody each other. No reports of injuries, of deaths, of nothing. 8 hours of mayhem. And when they showed the videos, I don't know how people didn't die. They were beating each other with sticks and throwing rocks at each other and everything else. So this is what they do. It's kind of like Portland, Oregon.
Let me predict that both sides in that conflict are being paid by the same people.
Well, of course they are. But there's the innocent people who are there because they are brainwashed, because they've drank too much fluorinated water. They've had too many EMFs beamed through their head. They've had too many chemicals put in their bloodstream. And they simply have, as part of the program, they have been attacked to, as Rudolf Steiner predicted, to kill their ability to think, to kill their ability to feel, and to kill their ability to connect with the divine.
Well, let me ask you something. Outside this particular group, now my family can be traced back to Ireland. How hard was that to talk about? Okay, Irish, whether you like them or whether you don't, that's where my family came from. But when you get into this subject, it gets so convoluted. And we discovered why, and that is because the real name is Babylonian Radonite. And the bloodline, as the modern DNA tests are all confirming, comes from Turkey, Persia, Sogdia, and even China. And so I think that's why these definitions are kept vague, because if you look at the DNA does not prove their point. And so they're doing everything they can to obfuscate the actual truth here.
In the law, as you pointed out to me, even if I say that I identify with that subgroup,
Right, that's another phrase.
then I can sue you, though I am not part of that subgroup in any sense of the word. And it says it right in the law. The assumed appearance of
perceived. It's talking about actual or perceived shared ancestry. Perceived. Oh, okay. Well, perceive.
I have high cheekbones. I'm a Cherokee. Now, the joke of it is I really am a Cherokee and I don't have high cheekbones. But the point is if I claim that, now I'm a protected group.
Right.
And if you say you think all the Indians, that it's a lie that the Indians were massacred in America, then I can sue you, can't I? But there's no teeth in that law. So what it is it's just kowtowing to the appropriate power sources.
This isn't anything you could prove. This is just a bunch of speculation, and you can get an expert up to talk any side of the speculation you want. So the main point here is this isn't a real law. It has no accountability. It has no definition of penalties, and it has no definition, because it's citing a group of British knights as the definers. So here we go. Here we go again. The Babylonian Radonites coming out of the city of London are anxious to take over now.
It reminds me of Chatham House rules, the British rules that say that they're little committees that no one ever gets to see a piece of paper with all the names of the members of the committee written on it. Only the people who show up at the meeting know that they're supposed to be there. There's nothing written down. Same rules used to apply for the Council on Foreign Relations, which is an extension of the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and the Round Table of Milner, and the intent of Cecil Rhodes. So these things, now here's the good news. Here's the good news, folks.
Can I point out there, since most people don't know this stuff, that the prime mover in both the Council on Foreign Relations and the Carnegie Institute and the British Institute for what's the Royal
RIIA, that's good enough. The Royal Institute for International Affairs.
There you go. Is a guy by the name of Elihu Root, who in the late 1800s was the Secretary of War. He was the Secretary of State for the U.S., and he was the personal attorney for J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie. And then they made him he was the founder of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he was the founder of the Carnegie Institute, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And one of his sidekicks was a guy by the name of Nicholas Murray Butler, who was the president of Columbia University for something like 42 years. And he was also the president of the Pilgrims Society branch in the US. Those are facts.
He also was Woodrow Wilson's controller.
Yes, exactly.
He also was the person who went to the Paris Peace Agreement and was part of the Sykes-Picot division of the Levant. He was part of every corrupt thing there was. You can't hardly find anyone more corrupt than that, and you won't even hear about him.
And he was a co-founder of the Pilgrims Society. So here we, folks, we know who the enemy is here. It's the Pilgrim Society. Let's start talking about it, and let's stop talking about the CIA, because the CIA is run by British MI6.
Now, going back to Chatham House rules, that also applied to everything from the Imperial Press Conference to any of their
the Empire Press Union,
but also the Privy Council and the Executive Privy Council, and anything to do with what we're talking about here at the top level uses Chatham House rules, which means that they know that everything is bugged. They can't talk on the phone. So they get together for dinner parties. They
Right.
get together for their secret meetings. They make sure nobody is there. It can't be recorded. They'd kill you if you recorded it. It used to be at the Bilderberger meeting, if they caught you recording it, you were dead. There was only one guy who ever recorded anything at the Bilderberger, and they killed him that we know of. Same thing with the Bohemian group, same thing with the trilaterals. They have the secret groups, but they don't have what we now have, the ability to actually communicate across the world and send files with absolute security. They do not have that because you put all those bad people on your list that you won't accept them for a MySkiff account.
Right.
And because you're so smart and the scrambler people you work with, I'll just call them scrambler people. That means the brilliant cryptologists. But these people that Michael works with said, no, we are not going to service the dark web people. We're not going to service the Serco. We're not going to service the senior executive service people. If they have a government ending on their account, and that can easily be figured out, they don't get to use it. So they don't have it. So what did they have? The World Economic Forum had for a while the advantage of secrecy in what they talked about. Now, no, they invite idiots, and then those idiots send out videos taken from phone cameras. And so we get to hear, and then they try to use it now as propaganda. It reversed on them. It's exactly what I'm talking about. They went too far. The people who are pushing the corpse of America into the grave are also going to fall into that grave with it, because civilization is over. When you can have insider trading groups like the World Economic Forum that get together that say we need to kill 6 billion people as fast as possible, and this is what they say and have said for years, just like the Pilgrim Society has always said, overpopulation, number one problem. We got to kill them with every disease we can create. That started Pirbright and all this other nonsense.
Wellcome Trust, Wellcome Foundation,
AstraZeneca, all of them are all British.
Right, they are.
And even the ones in China are British. Sanovo and the French, all of them.
Mariel
all
Health Institute.
And same thing for nuclear weapons and nuclear power. It's all British.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime there's power, they got control of it, and then they're running. For instance, folks, I'm sorry to have to tell you, no atomic bomb was ever dropped on Nagasaki or Hiroshima. We have proof of that because people were walking around the day afterwards and getting no contamination, radioactivity. There's none left there. There's none left at ground zero at Los Alamos. There's no radiation. There was no atomic bombs. Now, is there nuclear power plants? Yes. Are there nuclear bombs? Not that I've ever seen. But we live under the threat of that. And we get to hear what? Every week or two, Russia saying the nuclear option is on the table because we're not getting what we want. That is the words of a person who knows he doesn't have any nuclear weapons.
A fearmonger.
It's a fearmonger. It's nonsense. And so most of what we're told is a lie. But then the problem is that all the things that we're told it's good for us. It's good for our security. It's good for our safety. It's good for our health. Incorrect. Take a look. On every street corner, I go into, let's just call it any drugstore, and they have foods there. They have all these drugs there. All that is poison. I can't find a single thing in there that I can eat or drink that isn't poison. Think of that. The thing that is most available in America are poisons to kill you on every street corner, or stop and get some gas and then the exhaust.
So are you saying
you or whatever? The death attacks in America are coming from all directions, and now they're trying to kill your thinking. They don't want you to communicate the truth to one another. And so that's why Michael and his group has invented the first and only, and may be the only ever, who knows, because you're the only person smart enough to be able to do all the other parts of this. You can figure out the cryptology with the scrambler people, but then you have to apply it. And you can't apply it. The NSA can't apply this. British intelligence can't apply this. This is a person-to-person communication. And your new update allows you, tell them about the address book.
Yeah, we had set up the original to allow two people to exchange a file securely. So we were getting requests to do more than one. So we've actually created an address book that's now fully operational and will allow you to send one file to 12 people. And the reason it's not infinite number is because each of those transactions requires the recipient to approve you sending them a file, because in that approval, we're also getting some magical fingerprint information from that particular computer that is combined with the key from the sender into a master key that, let me bottom line it, will take 3 lifetimes of the universe to crack. So if you're around in 3 lifetimes of the universe, you could probably read what's there. And so the reason you haven't heard about this before is not because this math has not been there. It's polymorphic mathematics. The reason that the Department of Defense and all the bad guys in the Five Eyes groups haven't used polymorphic mathematics is because they haven't figured out a way to build a back door into this mathematics. And so they can't control it. And because each time an exchange occurs, a new master key is created, it's driving the cryptologists nuts because they can't crack it.
And even the bigwigs, the billionaires, the trillionaires, they don't have this, and they need it.
No, they don't.
And that's why they have to meet in person. Period. That's why a John Roberts has to fly off to Malta to get his payoff. Right. Because if he sent a communication, it will be intercepted, because he's a targeted person.
Yeah, these guys all know that the systems are corrupted. And even something that says it's encrypted and gives you a protocol and blah, blah, blah. There are multiple ways to unencrypt and read those messages. And these guys know it. And so that's why they have to do meetings in person and under parking garages where they can't get read by satellites and blah, blah, blah. All of that's true. All of that's real. But what my skiff does is gives you a way to communicate between two people on two machines, and in a way that the data in motion between the machines cannot be cracked. And it's quantum proof, because no quantum computer's ever been able to crack one of these things, nor is a quantum computer exactly everything people think it is. It's much more limited and in development than most people think. So any quantum discussion is usually fear porn.
And the best part of this is now I don't have to keep carrier pigeons to send you messages.
This is your modern day carrier pigeon.
It is, but this carrier pigeon is smart. This carrier pigeon reads the message, memorizes it, flies to your place you want to send it, and then delivers it. And that's the beauty of it. And if you don't think you need this, holy moly, if you don't think you need this, you know how many people have said to Michael, oh my heavens, do you understand that there are laws in place now where HIPAA information can't be discussed with anybody unless it's in a secure system, and there are no secure systems, so we can't even send this information over the wire or digitally. And so some people are like going completely nuts for this. Now, here's the deal. The evil ones, they would love to have this, but they want to be able to communicate to their 1,000 members in their group at one time. And Michael's going to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that's why they stole his intellectual property to begin with, because of what was called scalability. They needed to be able to create a psyops, a psychological operations that could manipulate entire nations at once. That's what this has always been about. If you thought it was about buying things online, you're just a silly consumer. This was about manipulation.
Or once you use Zuckerberg's phrase, we like to provide services for things that our users care for or care about.
Yeah, they care about the 7 deadly sins. They care. Don't even get me started. But that's what it was used for at first. And who was it that was setting up? Who was it that was using the dark web for more criminal activity than anybody else? That would be the CIA. And then they also used it for entrapment.
I would say MI6, but anyway.
Well, I'm sorry. The CIA is MI6. It is Five Eyes. And the point is that They knew all along exactly the power that this would give them. And the CIA at first didn't allow people to have it until the angelically, divinely, digitally inspired Timothy Berners-Lee's on a weekend drinking beer at CERN invented the World Wide Web and then gave it to everybody as his gift because he was a little too high, I guess, to realize it was worth trillions of dollars, huh?
Now that we know how this propaganda narrative rolls, that's a really stupid story.
It's as bad as the Zuckerberg story.
Exactly.
People don't know what I'm talking about when I say that on a weekend with a keg of beer, Zuckerberg claims that he sent out Facebook because here's what he said. Harvard didn't have a Facebook, so I made him one. Well, there was no Facebook, so how did you make them what didn't exist? And what did you use it for?
There wasn't one Facebook at Harvard. There were like 5.
And there was and there was also the military one. What was it called?
You're gonna get into LifeLog.
LifeLog.
No, LifeLog was made up from day one. It was made up. That was just one of the narratives. That was one of the narratives that they made up to obscure the fact that they stole the code from us.
Well, what was important is that I could go onto good old Mark of the Zuckerbeast site and get his assessment of the rear ends of the girls on the soccer team, because that's what he used it for, was to assess the bodies of the girls on
that was called Hot or Not.
Hot or Not. Oh, that's right. Hot
and they
or
voted
not.
on the looks.
And I remember when the guy I worked for, who used to work for the bigwigs in the business, he started that. Are you hot or are you not? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because that became the thing. So you used your social network to spy on others, Mr. Zuckerberg, to assess their bodies for sexual potential. And somehow that was the noble thing that made you trillions of dollars. Isn't that nice? It's all a lie. So the point is that when we look at this, we need to see that intelligence is the key factor. So if you intend to have an intentional community, if you intend to live with other people of like mind who want to have truth and want to grow gardens, guess what? It's almost illegal to have a garden in America. It is in other countries. So if you want to have a garden club, you better have a secure system for communication, or someday someone's going to show up at your door and arrest you for growing carrots. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, and my skiff is perfect for that. There's never been anything like this double exchange of keys, this disappearing of keys every time, and then this inability to crack the encryption.
Well, it's like being able to whisper to somebody the truth, and it's a beautiful thing, because sometimes if you don't get the truth off your chest, it drives you crazy. So we're going to have to soon, and we already are, and Tyler has already started this with her people and her team all over the world, sending these files that they don't want others to see. There may be things in them the government might not like. There may not be. But the point is, they're encrypted because it's none of your business for no other reason than that. And it just gives me the satisfaction. And mind you, I helped invent some of these systems that the government uses: microwave transmitters, diffuse microwave transmitters, secure microwave systems, NSA secure cryptology systems. I helped invent some of that stuff. And I can tell you, it's nothing compared to this.
Directed energy weapon. Did you help with that?
Well, at that time, there were already, people don't understand this.
What year was that?
They had already put accelerated particle beams into space back in probably the very early 70s. I know this for a fact from in 73, 74, 75. And then when Reagan came along, there were already 1,000 platforms in space of directed energy weapons. Who doesn't know that? He has speeches where he describes it and tells everybody that. And then when I say 1,000 points of light, they say, oh, you mean what Daddy Bush said in his address to on the New World Order, the city, or the 1,000 light. No. I was an advisor to Reagan. He clearly said, I have 1,000 points of light, and the Russians knew what that was. We gave Russians their technology. Okay, most of the advanced technology of Russia came directly from us, so that it would look like we were competing against someone. I witnessed that directly in the NSA, in the military, and then every year ever since. Because look at Skolkovo. Hillary Clinton went there and gave them hypersonic missiles from Raytheon, but they weren't perfected. That's the reason they've never used one effectively.
I think it's hard for people to fathom that that Hegelian dialectic could be organized on such a large scale. But what we see is these bankers, they know what they want. And so they're going to orchestrate all sides of the story to get what they want. And if you've got the money and you're buying all these people, just like all these demonstrations right now, I'm sure all those people are being paid. Otherwise, why would they keep doing it day after day? They're not that outraged.
All the people have been paid through George Soros NGOs, period. And we know that the people at the head of those organizations, I won't name them, you know what I'm talking about. Particularly, I will name Antifa. Antifa literally had hundreds of Ukrainian agents in America teaching those groups how to be neo-Nazis. Okay? I mean, who doesn't know that? This is fact. This has been discovered so many times. It's just
a lot
like,
of people don't know that.
oh, it's so sad. It's so sad. But, here's the deal. When people say Hegelian dialectics, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis is also Madison Avenue sales pitch.
Right.
They create a need that you didn't have. Then they tell you that you can't live without it. And then they come to the middle and they say they have the solution. Well, this is what all politics is. And what is it? It's the sympathy and antipathy of your emotions. So what is happening with propaganda has nothing to do with intelligence. Intelligence has almost been eradicated, exactly as Rudolf Steiner pointed out would happen in our time. He clearly pointed out and why, because of the poisons, the toxicity, and because of the brainwashing of materialism. But what we have here is the people manipulating emotions of people who are weak-minded and who don't even know that they have a willpower. They don't know that their ritual of their life is what they actually worship.
Oh,
they don't understand any of these things.
They don't know they're brainwashed.
They don't know they're brainwashed.
They assume they're not brainwashed.
Right. And if they're psychotic, they're told that they're just a protected minority. There's no problem with you. You need to be louder because you live in a democracy. Scream loud and you get what you want. That's what democracy means. Okay. That isn't what we have in America. And it has never worked in history except in small cities, as I pointed out, polises. And so they are so brainwashed that at this point, all they have to do is trigger what someone doesn't like. And then the next day, flip over to the other side and then come back to the middle. And no matter whether it was completely made up, both sides, both ends of the spectrum, made up, both lies, doesn't matter. What comes to the middle is what is believed because you think, because they emotionally manipulated you for your sympathies and your antipathies, that the middle ground has been reached. The middle ground was the demonic intent from the beginning.
Yeah, and we've got Bernays, we've got Tavistock Institute, we've got the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. These people have been sitting around cooking this stuff up for over 100 years. They're good at it. They know what they're doing. I mean, think of all those jingles we heard as children that we can repeat in a minute. I wish I were an Oscar Mayer Wiener.
You were well programmed. We can sing all
programmed.
those jingles, but we need to remember that since 1969, subliminal programming went into all commercials from every major corporation and every politician. So it is legal to hypnotize us, propagandize us, and take over our wills with demonic intent, folks. It is 100% legal in America and large parts of the West. At this moment, there's laws that support it. So when you start saying, what can we do about it? We have to let what is no longer a civilization, it is an uncivil group, and we have to let it fall into its grave. We have to say goodbye to the evil demonic intents that have been hidden because they're no longer hidden.
And to your point that we're dealing with demons here, we've got to speak to the demons in the city of London because that's who was directing us, or directing these efforts and these attacks on humanity.
Now, someone said to me today, reveal and then you can heal. Okay.
Exactly.
But if you don't get that it was revealed, you can't be healed.
Well,
And
we keep talking about, I mean, nothing we're seeing now throws off any of our research
oh,
at
no,
all.
no. Matter of fact, I was just saying to someone the other day that they may have taken off 1,000 of our videos. And now I don't even know if you can find the hundreds of articles we've written and the daily posts that Tyla and her team has made for years and years and years. And I challenge anyone, as I have always challenged you, prove anything we've said wrong. To this date,
Okay.
12 years later or so, no one has come up with one single fact to countermand or be a counterpoint to what we have said. And what we've said recently, working with Americans for Innovation, what we've said for the last 8 years is in truth history. We stand behind everything we say because we have the evidence we will present to the court if the court wants to say we made it up or we lied or we used hate speech. Is truth hate speech? Here's what hate speech is now: reading the Constitution. Here's what hate speech is now: quoting the Bill of Rights in front of a judge who is
Oh,
basically a British
wait,
aristocrat.
I saw the list here. Hate speech is going to be reading the Bible.
Oh, Tyler wanted us to talk about that. Let me point that out. When you read the Old Testament, it is hate speech against the Jews, against the Hebrews. And by the way, they didn't use the word Jew back in those days. They said Hebrews. So the Hebrews have basically written down their history, and it's a nasty history of them killing everyone that they encountered. Remember that they invented that. They invented genocide. Well, they didn't invent it, but they took the Assyrian form of genocide and made it much worse, and the Babylonian form of genocide and total autocratic control. But
Enslaved.
anyway, the point is the Old Testament is a story that bashes the Hebrews, the Israelites.
The
And so
prophets
it
railed against.
itself can now be thrown out because it is hate speech.
Well, the thing is, you can't generalize any group of people, and that's what is happening here. And the fact is, the prophets railed against a lot of bad behavior within uh, the Hebrew world, and that wasn't an attack on the entire class; it was an attack on bad behavior.
Now, one group, that group you talked about, the International Holocaust
The Holocaust Remembrance.
Remembrance Association or whatever. Yeah, well, they need to remember that 6 million people were killed, but a lot of them were homosexuals, they were cripples, they were
There were
Catholics,
Russians.
they
There were
were Russians,
Poles.
you name it. So when you talk about somebody saying that they are generalizing about a group of people, hardly anybody generalizes more than those ethnocentric groups about themselves. They are the ones who make up the myths that make themselves look persecuted so that then they can be protected.
Hmm.
And so I would suggest to you that the very people who were on the side of the six-pointed blue star flag, who were beating up the people who were on the other side, the pro-Hamas, I love it, pro-Hamas, which is Israel, pro-Palestinian people, I don't believe in genocide, and I don't believe that anybody should be killing anybody. And any leader that says they need to use force instead of having a conversation with their neighbor should simply be thrown out of all politics for the rest of their life. But then
Yeah,
again,
that's
I
what
have some very radical views.
in my opinion, most of our Congress, with that funding of Ukraine and what's going on in the Middle East, had just crawled into the demon's lair.
The All Preparedness and Pandemic Act has been ratified 5 different times, I believe, or 6 times. And almost every time it was completely, what do you call it, unanimous. It is anti-constitutional. It takes away our sovereignty. It takes away the Bill of Rights. It uses us as guinea pigs, and on and on and on and on and on and on. It gives our sovereignty over to the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and their International Health Organization. And so we have said all along that what we need to do is simply say to Washington, D.C., you're all fired because all of you voted for unconstitutional law, the preparedness and all pandemic law. Okay, and kick them all out. and then anybody else that we have all new elections, a total recall of all of them, have all new elections, and you must sign upon penalty of death, which you already did, because treason is death in some conditions, right? So most of those people in DC already signed that we can kill them if they go against the Constitution. That's treason, right? So
Yep.
if we have new politicians, they have to sign that they will abide by the Constitution. And then we have to take the federal government out of states' rights, and we have to abolish all federal courts, and we have to abolish most of the federal agencies and all of
Well, that pretty much goes
Serco
along
and
with the 24
SES.
point strategy that Lillian Scott Troy uncovered for the Pilgrims back in 1908. And I put that picture back up of this gentleman who's running the group cited in our laws.
So, Michael, it's wonderful what you guys are doing. It's the thing that we need. It's the antidote to our age. It is the path to discernment and the path to truth for those of us who wish to communicate with one another. And it's the way to protect your God-given rights as well as your constitutional rights. So again, I congratulate you and the Scroungler people, the Mice Gift people, your whole team working there. And I thank you. I thank you very much for giving us back the rights that we believed that we had. They've been taken away, and we need to take them back.
You're welcome. And I want to send a special greeting out to everyone. As an Orthodox Christian, this is Holy Week. This is Great and Holy Friday today. So I wish everyone a blessed Easter weekend.